In 1962, a teenage girl named Margaret walked into the Woolworths on Olive Street in St. Louis, climbed onto a red vinyl stool that spun beneath her, and ordered a hot turkey sandwich, a chocolate phosphate, and a slice of lemon meringue pie for less than $1. She remembers the soda jerk in the white paper hat. She remembers the smell of grilled cheese and coffee in the air. She remembers her father on the stool beside her, ordering coffee, black, no sugar, reading the afternoon paper while she swung her feet under the counter. Margaret is 78 years old now. The Woolworths is gone. The counter is gone. The soda jerk is gone, and so is her father. But the memory of that lunch sits inside her like something sacred. Number 9 on this list was the comfort meal that lunch counters served by the thousands every single day. Number 3 was the dish you ordered when you needed to feel taken care of by someone. And number 1 was a drink so carefully made and so completely vanished that most people under 50 have never tasted it. These 15 foods built the everyday rituals of a generation. They sustained working women on their lunch hour, comforted children after school, and gave traveling salesmen a quiet place to rest their feet. Hit that subscribe button and let us count down 15 classic 1960s lunch counter foods that no one serves anymore. Number 15. The Lime Rickey. Before bottled soda took over American kitchens, the Lime Rickey was the drink of summer at every lunch counter in America. The soda jerk pumped a measure of lime syrup into a tall glass, squeezed half a fresh lime over the top, dropped in a few cubes of crushed ice, and filled the rest with a hiss of seltzer from the chrome dispenser. The result was bright, tart, and electric on the tongue. It cost $0.10 in 1962. For a child in summer, it tasted like the whole season had been poured into one glass. The Lime Rickey came out of New York and Boston soda fountains in the late 1800s, and by the 1960s, it had become the children's drink at every lunch counter from Maine to California. Mothers ordered them while they sipped iced coffee at the next stool. Soda jerks made hundreds a day during July and August. The drink required a real fountain station and a real person who knew how to balance syrup and seltzer by feel. When the fountains disappeared in the 1970s, the Lime Rickey disappeared with them. The magic was the chrome, the lime, and the sound of seltzer hissing into a glass on a hot afternoon. Number 14. Liver and onions with bacon. This was the meal that separated grown-ups from children at the lunch counter. A slice of beef liver, dredged in flour, salt, and pepper, was laid into a hot iron skillet alongside 2 strips of bacon and a tangle of yellow onions, cooked until they turned sweet and translucent. The bacon fat seasoned the liver. The onions cut the iron tang. A scoop of mashed potatoes on the side caught the pan drippings. Liver was the cheapest meat at the butcher case in 1965, sometimes 29 cents a pound, and lunch counters bought it by the case because doctors of that era prescribed liver for anemia, fatigue, and what they politely called nervous exhaustion in women. A working woman on her lunch hour could order liver and onions for 75 cents and feel like she had taken her medicine and her dinner in one shot. The dish has not vanished because anyone disliked it. It vanished because we stopped trusting our grandmothers about food. Iron tablets in plastic bottles replaced what a plate of liver used to fix in 20 minutes. Number 13. Chipped beef on toast. The military called it something unprintable. Lunch counters called it creamed beef. Salt-cured dried beef, shaved into paper-thin curls, was dropped into a cream gravy made from butter, flour, and whole milk, then ladled over 2 slices of buttery white toast cut on the diagonal, a sprinkle of black pepper, a dash of paprika if the cook was feeling generous. This was the meal that survived 2 world wars and the Great Depression and walked straight into the 1960s lunch counter as a 50-cent special. The dried beef came in little glass jars from Armour or Knaus, and a single jar fed 4 people. The gravy stretched it further. For an old soldier eating lunch alone, chipped beef on toast was a return to mess hall mornings. It was salt and fat and warm cream over toast, and it tasted like a memory he could not quite name. Restaurant chains in the 1980s decided it sounded too humble, too military, too poor. They quietly took it off the menu, and nobody asked their grandsons what they had been missing. Number 12. The pimento cheese sandwich. South of the Mason-Dixon line, the pimento cheese sandwich was the queen of the lunch counter. Sharp orange cheddar, grated by hand, mixed with mayonnaise, chopped pimentos, and a pinch of cayenne. Then spread thick between 2 slices of soft white bread and griddled on the flat top until the bread turned golden and the cheese inside went molten. In 1963, a hot pimento cheese sandwich at a Woolworth's counter in Atlanta or Charleston cost 35 cents. A cold one cost 25. Working women ordered them by the thousands during the lunch rush, wrapped in waxed paper to take back to the office. The pimentos came in small jars from California. The cheese came from Wisconsin. The recipe came from somebody's grandmother, scribbled on the back of a flour sack, refined over 50 years of church suppers. The pimento cheese sandwich never died in the South. It just moved out of public lunch counters and back into private kitchens, where it lives on as a family secret. Northerners who try it for the first time in their 70s often weep a little, not from the cayenne, but from the realization of what they missed. First pattern break. Here is what the lunch counter actually was. It was not just a place to eat. It was a stage on which the small dignities of working life played out every single day. A woman in a tailored suit could sit beside a man in coveralls. A traveling salesman could rest his feet next to a school teacher on her break. The waitress knew everyone by their orders, and the orders never changed. Coffee black, no sugar. Tuna on white, no onion. The cottage cheese plate, please, and a glass of ice water. The lunch counter was where America practiced something we have largely lost. The practice of being a stranger in a public place with grace. Of sitting at a long counter with people whose lives you did not know, eating the same food at the same price, served by the same hands. Nobody filmed it. Nobody photographed their plate. Nobody hurried. You sat, you ate, you left a quarter on the counter and walked back into your afternoon. That ritual is what we lost when we lost lunch counters. The food was only half the story. The other half was the company, even when the company never spoke to you. Number 11. The tuna melt. The tuna salad came out of a stainless steel hotel pan kept cold beneath the counter. Tuna, mayonnaise, finely chopped celery, a squeeze of lemon, salt, and pepper. The cook scooped a generous mound onto a slice of rye bread, laid 2 slices of American cheese on top, capped it with another piece of rye, buttered both sides, and pressed it onto the flat top until the cheese ran out the edges in golden rivers. In 1964, a tuna melt at the lunch counter cost 60 cents. It came on a thick white plate with a pickle spear, a small cup of coleslaw, and a handful of potato chips. The combination of cool tuna salad inside and molten cheese against toasted rye was a small marvel of contrasts that only a flat-top griddle could produce. Home cooks tried to recreate it for decades and never quite got there. Something about the seasoned griddle, the steady heat, and the practiced hand of a short-order cook turning out 200 sandwiches a day made the tuna melt taste different at the counter than it ever did at home. Number 10. The patty melt on rye. A thin hamburger patty, smashed flat on the griddle until the edges turned dark and crispy, was layered with caramelized yellow onions and 2 slices of Swiss cheese between 2 pieces of buttered marble rye, then grilled until the cheese surrendered and the bread turned mahogany. The patty melt was invented around 1948 at Tiny Naylor's coffee shop in Los Angeles, and within a decade, it had spread to every lunch counter in America. By 1965, it was the second most popular item at most counters, just behind the grilled cheese. It cost 70 cents and came with a side of pickles. The genius of the patty melt was that it solved a problem nobody else had thought about. A hamburger needed a bun, and buns went stale, and stale buns ruined hamburgers. Rye bread, griddled in butter, did not go stale. It got better. The patty melt vanished from American lunch counters when fast food chains decided that hamburgers belonged on cheap buns. We traded the patty melt for the assembly line, and we did not even know what we were losing. Number 9. The Denver sandwich. Also called the Western, the Denver was an omelet sandwich born in the chuck wagons of the American West in the 1800s. Eggs scrambled with diced ham, green pepper and onion, folded into a thick golden patty, and laid between 2 pieces of buttered white toast. By the 1960s, the Denver was the working man's breakfast, served all day at every lunch counter from coast to coast. In 1962, a Denver sandwich cost 55 cents and came with hash browns. Truck drivers ordered them at 3 in the afternoon. Night shift workers ordered them at 7 in the morning. Lunch counters loved the Denver because it used scraps. Leftover diced ham from yesterday's breakfast platter, the last green pepper from Tuesday's salad bar. The Denver turned remnants into a meal that customers paid full price for, and they paid happily. The dish quietly disappeared when the egg replaced the omelet in fast food breakfast menus. The McDonald's Egg McMuffin in 1972 was, in some ways, a flattened, simplified Denver. Most Americans under 60 have never tasted the original. Number 8. Chicken a la king on toast. This was the elegant lunch counter dish, the one a woman ordered when she wanted to feel like she was somewhere finer than a Woolworth's. Diced cooked chicken, sliced mushrooms, green peas, and pimentos folded into a sherry cream sauce, ladled over crisp toast points or split popovers, a sprinkle of paprika across the top. By the 1960s, the dish had migrated from white tablecloth restaurants down to lunch counters, where the recipe was simplified. The sherry replaced with a splash of cream, and the price set at 75 cents a plate. It came on the same heavy white china as everything else, but somehow it felt special. The yellow sauce, the pink pimentos, the green peas. It looked like spring on a plate. Chicken a la king died because frozen entrees killed it. Stouffer's introduced a frozen version in the 1970s, and within a decade the dish became associated with TV dinners instead of lunch counters. The fresh, hot, hand-stirred original is almost impossible to find now. If your grandmother made it, treasure her recipe. It is a piece of vanishing America. Number 7. The Salisbury Steak Blue Plate. This was the working person's hot lunch, a patty of seasoned ground beef, shaped flat and oval, browned hard on the griddle, then simmered in onion gravy made from the pan drippings. It came on a divided blue plate, the divisions filled with mashed potatoes, gravy soaked, a scoop of canned green beans, and a dinner roll with a pat of butter. The Salisbury steak was invented by a Civil War doctor named James Salisbury in the 1880s as a health food. By 1965, it had become the cornerstone of the lunch counter blue plate special, priced at $1.25 with coffee included. The blue plate itself was a phenomenon. Restaurants used divided plates, often blue, to portion out a complete meal at a single fixed price. Working men ordered the blue plate without even reading the menu. It was understood. The Salisbury steak survived into TV dinners and school cafeterias and was eventually reduced to a sad gray puck in a foil tray. We took something that fed a generation of factory workers and turned it into something we apologize for serving. That is a quiet kind of loss that nobody mourns out loud. Second pattern break. There is something we should say about lunch counter waitresses, because nobody else is going to say it. Those women, in their white aprons and their sensible shoes, working 10-hour shifts on hard tile floors, were the unsung architects of American hospitality. They remembered your order from 3 weeks ago. They knew which customer was a widower and gave him an extra slice of pie. They knew which mother was tired and slid her a free cup of coffee. They wrote your check on a green pad with a stub of pencil, slid it across the counter without looking, and turned to refill the next coffee cup without breaking stride. Most of those women are gone now. The ones still alive are in their 80s and 90s, and they do not get interviewed for documentaries. They worked for tips. They raised children on those tips. They put husbands through trade school on those tips. They kept 1 million lunch counters running for a generation, smiling through bad backs and varicose veins and the slow death of the institution that employed them. If you remember a waitress who was kind to you in 1965, say her name out loud sometimes. She earned that. Number 6. The egg salad sandwich on white. 2 hard-boiled eggs, mashed with a fork until the yolks crumbled and the whites flaked into rough pieces, mixed with a heaping spoonful of mayonnaise, a pinch of salt, a few twists of black pepper, and sometimes a whisper of yellow mustard. Spread thick between 2 slices of soft white bread, the crusts trimmed off if it was a fancy counter, served with a leaf of iceberg lettuce poking out the edges. In 1963, an egg salad sandwich at a lunch counter cost 35 cents and came with a side of sliced dill pickle and a few potato chips. It was the lunch ordered by women in white gloves and pearl earrings, by school teachers on their 30-minute break, by the secretary on her way back to the typing pool. The egg salad was made fresh every morning by the kitchen prep cook, who boiled 4 dozen eggs at a time and peeled them under cold, running water before mashing the salad in a stainless steel bowl. Egg salad disappeared from public eating, not because anyone stopped liking it, but because we became afraid of mayonnaise sitting under counter lights. Health departments grew suspicious. Restaurants stopped making it from scratch. The pre-packaged version in plastic wedges at gas stations is not the same sandwich. It is the ghost of one. Number 5. The triple-decker clubhouse sandwich. This was the architectural marvel of the lunch counter. 3 slices of toasted white bread, 2 layers of filling, fastened with frill picks at each corner, cut into 4 neat triangles, and served on a platter with a mound of potato chips and a spear of pickle. The bottom layer held thinly sliced roast turkey breast, leaf lettuce, and tomato. The top layer held bacon, lettuce, tomato, and a generous swipe of mayonnaise. The middle slice of toast was the engineering miracle that held everything together. In 1964, a clubhouse sandwich at a hotel coffee shop or upscale lunch counter cost 95 cents, sometimes $1.25 at a Schrafft's or a Walgreens in a downtown business district. It was the sandwich a woman ordered when her husband was paying. It was the sandwich a businessman ordered when he was entertaining a client. It was the special occasion sandwich, served on heavy china, eaten with a knife and fork, never with the hands. The frill picks themselves were a small ceremony. Tiny bits of cellophane and paper at the top of each pick, often colored red or green, signaled that this was not a casual sandwich. When deli chains in the 1980s started slapping a third piece of bread on top of any sandwich and calling it a club, the original clubhouse died of indignity. Number 4. The cottage cheese and peach plate. This was the diet plate of the 1960s, ordered by women who were watching their figures, and it was somehow infinitely more satisfying than any modern diet meal. A cup of small curd cottage cheese in the center of a chilled plate, surrounded by a halo of canned peach halves arranged like petals, a small mound of cottage cheese in the hollow of each peach, and a leaf of iceberg lettuce underneath the whole arrangement. A maraschino cherry on top of the central scoop, a scattering of chopped walnuts if the kitchen was feeling generous. In 1965, the cottage cheese and peach plate cost 50 cents at most lunch counters and was a permanent fixture on the menu. It was the lunch a woman ordered after her doctor told her to lose 10 pounds. It was the lunch a grandmother ordered when she was watching her sugar. It was a plate that managed to feel like both a treat and a punishment. The cottage cheese plate vanished when the diet industry replaced it with shakes and bars and pre-packaged frozen meals that promised faster results. We traded a real meal of fresh cottage cheese, sweet peaches, and crunchy walnuts for chemical powder mixed with water in a plastic shaker. We called it progress. The women who used to order the cottage cheese plate at the counter, sitting alone reading the newspaper, taking a quiet hour for themselves, are mostly gone now. They knew something about the rhythm of a lunch hour that we have forgotten how to do. Third pattern break. Here is what nobody ever tells you about losing the lunch counter. We lost the practice of eating alone in public without shame. A woman in 1963 could walk into a Walgreens at noon, sit at the counter by herself, order a chicken salad sandwich and a cup of coffee, and read her book or her paper for 45 minutes without anyone thinking it was strange. She was not lonely, she was free. Today, eating alone in public has become something we hide from. We eat in our cars in parking lots. We eat at our desks, staring at screens. We bring takeout home to empty kitchens and call it dinner. The lunch counter gave Americans a third place that was not work and not home, where you could be alone but not isolated, surrounded by humanity but unbothered. That kind of space barely exists anymore. The coffee shops that replaced lunch counters in the 1990s sell us the chair, but not the company. The waitress is gone. The regulars are gone. The clatter of plates and forks and the low murmur of strangers eating the same food at the same time is gone. We are richer than the people who ate at lunch counters. We are also so much lonelier than they ever knew how to be. Number 3. The hot turkey sandwich. This was the dish you ordered when you needed to feel taken care of by someone. 2 slices of soft white bread laid open on a heavy plate. 3 thick slices of fresh roasted turkey breast piled across the bread. A scoop of buttery mashed potatoes nestled to one side. The whole thing flooded under a ladle of dark brown turkey gravy made from the pan drippings of that morning's roast. A scoop of canned cranberry sauce on the edge of the plate, sometimes a few green peas. Eaten with a knife and fork, the bread soaked through with gravy until it was almost a porridge. In 1962, a hot turkey sandwich at a lunch counter cost 85 cents. The turkey was roasted whole in the back kitchen every morning, and by lunch the kitchen smelled like Thanksgiving. For a widow eating lunch alone, for a son visiting his elderly mother in the hospital across the street, for a young woman feeling homesick in a strange city. The hot turkey sandwich was Thanksgiving on a Tuesday. It was the meal that said, "Someone roasted a whole bird this morning, and a piece of it is for you." That generosity, anonymous and daily, is almost impossible to find now. The hot turkey sandwich required a kitchen that roasted real birds. When food service moved to deli-sliced, plastic-wrapped, vacuum-packed turkey loaf, the soul of the dish died. Number 2. The hot fudge sundae in the metal dish. This was the ritual at the end of the meal, the small reward that turned an ordinary lunch into a memory. 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream in a tall, footed metal dish, the kind that frosted instantly when the ice cream went in. A ladle of dark, hot fudge poured slowly over the top, just hot enough to soften the surface of the ice cream into a thin pool. A swirl of whipped cream from the canister, a scattering of chopped salted peanuts, a maraschino cherry, stem and all, balanced on the very top. It came with a long-handled silver spoon and a glass of ice water on the side. In 1965, a hot fudge sundae cost 35 cents at a Woolworth's and 50 cents at a fancier counter like Schraft's. For a child whose father had taken her downtown on a Saturday, that sundae was the entire reason for the trip. The cold of the ice cream against the heat of the fudge, the crunch of the peanuts, the way the metal dish stayed cold all the way to the bottom, the drag of the long spoon against the chrome. The metal dish itself was the soul of the sundae. Plastic and paper bowls came in during the 1970s, and they killed the experience without anyone realizing what was happening. A hot fudge sundae in a paper bowl is just ice cream and sauce. A hot fudge sundae in a frosted metal dish, sitting on a counter in front of a child whose feet do not touch the floor, is something else entirely. It is the taste of being loved by a parent on a Saturday afternoon. We threw away the dish, and we did not know that we were throwing away the feeling. Number 1. The chocolate phosphate. The greatest casualty of the lunch counter era was the soda fountain itself. And the greatest soda fountain drink that has vanished is the chocolate phosphate. The soda jerk pumped a measure of chocolate syrup into a tall, fluted glass, added a few drops of acid phosphate from a small brown bottle, then pulled the long handle on the chrome dispenser and watched cold seltzer foam up to the rim. The phosphate part was the secret. Acid phosphate was a clear, slightly sour liquid made from phosphoric acid and mineral salts, used to cut the sweetness of the syrup and add a bright, tangy bite. It was the difference between a chocolate soda and a chocolate phosphate. The phosphate was sharper, more refreshing, more complicated. It tasted like nothing else on earth. In 1962, a chocolate phosphate cost 15 cents and came with a long, thin straw and a paper napkin folded under the glass. The soda jerk made it in front of you, his hands moving with the unconscious grace of a man who had pulled 1,000 handles 1,000 times. He never measured the syrup. He knew it by feel. He never spilled. He never rushed. When acid phosphate fell out of common use in the 1970s, replaced by cheaper artificial flavorings and pre-mixed soda from a gun, the chocolate phosphate quietly died. Most pharmacists and bartenders today have never heard of it. There are only a handful of historic soda fountains left in America that still make a real chocolate phosphate from scratch. If you ever find one, sit down at the counter and order it. Drink it slowly. Look around at the chrome and the tile and the pressed tin ceiling. You are tasting something that an entire generation of Americans grew up on, that was as common as Coca-Cola, and that has now been lost almost completely. There is no Instagram for it. There is no marketing campaign behind it. There is just the drink, made by hand, exactly as it was made in 1962. That is enough. That is everything. Here is my challenge for you this week. Do something that the lunch counter generation knew how to do. Eat one meal alone in public, without your phone. Not at home, not in the car. Sit down at a counter or a small table somewhere, order something simple, and let the world go on around you. That practice of being alone in company, that small daily dignity, is what the lunch counter taught us, and it is what we lost. If you remember any of these foods, tell me about them in the comments. Tell me about the lunch counter you went to as a child. Tell me about the waitress whose name you still remember. Tell me which one you would order if you could go back. The hot fudge sundae in the metal dish, the pimento cheese sandwich, the lime Rickey, the clubhouse with the frill picks. Because these were not just meals. They were the small daily rituals of a country that knew how to slow down for 45 minutes in the middle of the day. They were the proof that ordinary people deserve to eat something prepared by hand, served with care, on a real plate, by a real person who would remember them next Tuesday. We did not just lose recipes when we lost the lunch counter. We lost a way of being in the world. The food was good. The company, even silent, was better. And both are worth remembering before the last person who sat at a real counter takes the memory with them. If this brought back even one moment of your own life, hit subscribe so we can keep these stories alive together.